everyone. So today we will be reading the second part of the lesson called A Truly Beautiful Mind. Thus, listen carefully, and there will be questions after this video for comprehension check. Okay. So far we have seen the childhood days of Albert Einstein and how he transferred and moved into a new university and school before that, right, in Switzerland, and how he met Mileva Merrick, his ally there, his friend. Now, while Einstein was solving the most difficult problems in physics, so we know he was very keen and he was a genius in physics, so he was solving the most difficult problem, which we discussed, right? E is equal to mc square. His private life was unraveling. So unraveling here means falling apart, collapsing. Albert had wanted to marry Mileva right after finishing his studies, but his mother was against it. So his mother, Albert's mother, was against the marriage. Why? She thought Mileva, who was 3 years older than her son, was too old for him. One reason is she's older. She was also bothered by Mileva's intelligence. So Mileva, as we know, is also an intelligent creature just like Einstein. She is a book like you, his mother said. Einstein put the wedding off. So put off means when you postpone something, when you cancel something. And the reason is his mother's opposition here. The pair finally married in January 1903 and had 2 sons. Pair here means Albert and Mileva. But a few years later, the marriage faltered. Then marriage started becoming weak, and then it wavers. Mileva, meanwhile, was losing her intellectual ambition and becoming an unhappy housewife. So now after the marriage, she had to become a housewife, which made her unhappy, and she was also losing her intellectual ambition. So because she was intelligent, her aim relates to that of intelligence, which is known as intellectual here. After years of constant means continuous fight, the couple finally divorced in 1919. Einstein married his cousin Elsa the same year. Now the words are simple here, right? Let's move on. Einstein's new personal chapter coincided with his rise to world fame. Now after this, his new chapter began because then he became worldwide famous. In 1915, he had published his general theory of relativity, which provided a new interpretation of gravity. So interpretation means explanation of gravity, and because the explanation of gravity changed, all because of his theory called general theory of relativity, which he published in 1915. An eclipse of the sun in 1919 brought proof that it was accurate. So eclipse means when a celestial body comes between two different celestial bodies, like between sun and earth. If moon comes in between at the same exact location, which blocks the ray of sun reaching the earth, we call that eclipse. Okay, so that eclipse brought proof that the general theory of relativity was accurate and correct. Einstein had correctly calculated in advance before the extent to which the light from a fixed star would be deflected through the sun's gravitational field. The newspapers proclaimed his work as a scientific revolution. So the newspaper declared and announced that the work he has given and published was a scientific revolution. So revolution means something that changes the base, right? So his theory changed the interpretation, the explanation, the meaning of gravity by then. So after that published, Einstein received the Nobel Prize for Physics in 1921. He was showered with honors and invitations from all over the world and lauded by the press. So he was given much honor and invitation, and he was also praised by the press. So press here refers to the news, telecast, and all this stuff. When the Nazis came to power in Germany in 1933, Einstein immigrated to the United States. Now Nazis here refers to the reign of Hitler. So everybody knows Hitler, right? So when Hitler rose to power, when he became the dictator of Germany, Einstein had to immigrate. Immigrate means he had to move to United States, to a new place. 5 years later, the discovery of nuclear fission in Berlin had American physicists in an uproar. In an uproar means they started opposing, okay, the discovery of nuclear fission. Nuclear fission here refers to creating a very powerful energy with the help of nuclear, okay. Many of them had fled from fascism just as Einstein had. So fascism is also another form of dictatorship which was then happening inside Italy. So many of the scientists there also have to move, and fled here refers to move, run away from somewhere, right? So they moved away just like Einstein, and now they were afraid the Nazis could build and use an atomic bomb. So now the physicists were afraid that Nazis have much power to build and use an atomic bomb which might be very destructive. At the urging of a colleague, urging means request, at the request of his fellow worker or colleague, Einstein wrote a letter to the American President Franklin D. Roosevelt on 2nd August 1939. So he wrote a letter, right, in which he warned the American president that a single bomb of this type, the one that Nazis were making, exploded in a pot, might very well destroy the whole pot together with some of the surrounding territory. So a pot is a place where ships are parked, and then when it is used on such pot, it will not just destroy the overall pot but also some of the surrounding territory, means area. His words did not fail to have an effect. So his letter had some results. The result was the Americans developed the atomic bomb in a secret project of their own and dropped it on the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in August 1945. So we know this sad story, right? The hideous, ugly story when American dropped atomic bombs on the city of Japan called Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which was very destructive in its nature. Einstein was deeply shaken by the extent of destruction. Shaken means he was very sad and distressed. This time he wrote a public missive to the United Nations. This time he wrote a public missive means a long letter to United Nations. So United Nations is a group of different nations of the world who work for the welfare of common people. In it he proposed the formation of a world government. So he proposed that they should form a world government. Unlike the letter to Roosevelt, this one made no impact. No result was there. But over the next decade means 10 years, and after that, Einstein got ever more involved in politics. Okay, he was not very interested in politics before, but then he got involved and engaged in agitating for an end to the arms buildup and using his popularity to campaign for peace and democracy. So then he started protesting against the weapon buildup, the weapon manufacturers, and then he also started advocating that peace and democracy are good for general human beings, and then arms are not. When Einstein died in 1955 at the age of 76, he was celebrated as a visionary and world citizen as much as a scientific genius. Now we know that Einstein was a scientific genius and discussed that the word genius became synonymous, right, similar word with Einstein. But not only that, he was also celebrated as a visionary, a person who has vision, a person who can predict future, and a world citizen because he cared for the overall world. He is not a selfish person. He has concern for for every country which is in the world. So he was also celebrated as a world citizen by them. Now we have some questions here. I want my dear students to write these questions down in your notebook. The first one is just to ask who had these opinions. Then the second one is to explain the reason behind this, and then there are like few questions below. I want all of you to do these questions in your notebook and then share it to me as your homework. Okay, again, on our next class we will discuss the overall biography on Einstein once again, and then we will have question and answer uh, to evaluate and check how much you have understood. Okay, in the meantime, I suggest all of you to go through the lesson by yourself once and read it thoroughly so that you will understand in a much better way. That's it. Thank you for now. Have a nice day, everyone.